Andrei Tarkovsky died in exile in Paris. He was an auteur in the realm of Russian cinema. However, despite the attention he brought to Russian cinema, he was known for being unpopular with the Soviet government. This alienation was because of the exilic nature of his films, which forms an almost paradoxical relationship with his life. There's more to it than just simply an existentialist view of getting out of the Soviet Union, though. Tarkovsky's films go further than that. The characters find themselves outside of the Soviet Union, or a metaphorical society akin to it, and associating with an outside influence. The outside influence takes on a multitude of different forms in his films, but the thread of themes is perpetual. Tarkovsky was not popular with the Soviet government because of these progressive and recurring themes of exile that reaffirmed the idea that Soviet people should fraternize with outside influences to achieve a higher form of existence. Tarkovsky provides context for his film's exilic nature with his 1975 film The Mirror. The Mirror examines the life of a poet and uses this lens to cast a light on Soviet history. This film provides the reasons for his film's exilic nature through the deprecating Soviet society. This deprecation is a purposeful and unbiased use of Soviet history to cast a light on Soviet civilization that the Soviet government would be tremorous to be fond of. According to Tolof Nelson, Mirror does not chronicle the past, present, future narratively, nor make sense of history in terms of the intrigue of an unfolding plot, but deploys a topical itinerary of links and send-offs to recurring places or stations of memory. These links reference penitent Soviet events which would not be looked at by the Soviet Union as proud moments in their history. One event references the siege of Leningrad. According to Anastasia Semenov, when the siege began, the population of Leningrad exceeded 2.5 million. However, once the war ended, only one-third of the population remained, as many died of starvation or were able to evacuate. Acknowledging a loss in Soviet history casted perfidy on Tarkovsky in the eyes of the Soviet government. Another Soviet event shown is the Sino-Soviet split. The Sino-Soviet split was a byproduct of the arms race and tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. According to Walter A. McDougall, Mao Zedong initiated the split when he lectured, "If the imperialists insisted on unleashing nuclear war and half of mankind died, the other half would remain, while imperialism would be razed to the ground and the whole world would become socialist." When Khrushchev didn't deliver a prototype nuclear warhead, the Chinese revoked their Slavic independence and promised their own nuclear arsenal. On July 16, 1960, the USSR called back all its specialists from China, making the two nations officially asunder. The Mirror also references Stalinist era in two scenes. It's discussed when the protagonist's father left, which was in 1935, a time when the Gulag had 800,000 prisoners in camps and 300,000 in work colonies. This element of repressive Soviet society is embellished in Stalker in 1979. The Mirror does obey the thesis of this essay in its own unique way. It creates an exile of the mind, a man non-linearly examining his memories and thereby revealing key points in Russian history that disclose Tarkovsky's personal distaste for the country. The exile of the mind creates this association with the otherness, according to Tolof Nelson. When boredom of mild suffering exposes us to the immediacy or drift of time and the sense of our own morality is brought forward, the expansion of contraction of temporal experience allows something new to emerge, a moment of contact with otherness, words with which to speak or silent openness to the unknown. This is more of an equivocation of the thesis and is not as clearly laid out as the themes in the next few movies. Solaris 1972 was in some ways a response to 2001: A Space Odyssey 1968. Where the spaceship looked clean and sleek in 2001, Solaris takes a more dirty and lived-in approach which would later inspire George Lucas's Star Wars. This film follows the thesis to a T by following the common theme of exile. There's this act of reaching out into space to seek something colonizable that cannot be found at home. It's not explicitly said that home is the Soviet Union, but it does draw parallels to the Soviet space program. At first, the Soviet space program was a success. According to Jack H. Lashendock, on April 12, 1961, the Soviet Union's Vostok single-man spacecraft successfully launched from Baikonur Space Center with cosmonaut Yuri A. Gagarin on board. Just shy of 2 hours later, 1 hour and 48 minutes later, to be exact, Gagarin parachuted into Saratov region of modern-day Russia, having just made history as the first human in space and the first human to orbit the Earth. The Soviets may have won the space race, but they did not beat America to the moon. The Soviet space program lost the moon race, which is being referenced in this film, in the seeking of a colonization of a singular planet. The spacecraft comes into orbit of the planet Solaris, which is a living, breathing thing. It scans the protagonist Kelvin's brain and clones his dead wife Harry. She appears on the ship and does not speak, but does show loving compassion and grants the protagonist what he wants, which is to see his wife again. For all intents and purposes, she is a person. According to Vladimir Terminov, her devotion to Kelvin, her meek and compassionate nature, her repeatedly manifested despair at being unable to live up to human expectations, and her heroic self-sacrifice at the end of the story all point to the existence of unmistakable moral individuality. This film begs the questions: what were they searching for in space? Were conditions on the home front so bleak that they had to reach out into space for a solution? Does the alien clone represent another country that brings satisfaction to the protagonist escaping a Soviet country? The Soviet government must not have liked those implications. Tarkovsky's essay, Tarkovsky's Stalker, Finding Meaning in Existence and Mental Health, is a meticulous vivisection of some of the most important aspects in the 1979 Russian film Stalker. In his film, according to Tarkovsky, Tarkovsky performs a metaphorical pirouette on our understanding of mental health by using analysis of the psyche through examination to explore finding meaning in existence and life beyond ordinary experience. This film begins in a repressive society that has outlawed passage to the zone. Within the zone is a room that grants wishes. Within the confines of their society, the color grading is splashed with sepia tones to underline the boredom and lack of existential magic. The way the society of Stalker is guarded is reminiscent of the Gulag. The writer, the professor, and the stalker escape to the zone where vestiges of society remain but have been overcome with chrysanthemum and the power of nature. The color palette changes to accentuate the green in this new area they've entered. The zone is the outside influence. The zone is alive in its own way. The zone is a higher power, enigmatic and existential. Friedrich Nietzsche, an existentialist, documents this escape from society to existentialism when he says, "They cannot be derivable from this transitory, seductive, deceptive, mean little world, from this confusion of desire and illusion, in the womb of transitory, in the hidden God." Stalker is based on Nietzsche, as the zone could be seen as a hidden god, and the characters are within the interior of that being, escaping the mean little world. The Stalker describes the zone as a psychological experience that demands respect or else it will punish you, and reinforces that argument that their journey through the zone is a journey of the mind and a form of analysis of the psyche through examination, when he says,
"Но в каждый момент она такова, какой мы ее сами сделали своим состоянием."
The evidence suggests that a psychological and existential experience like this would improve the mental health of an individual, according to Tarkovsky. The understanding is to propose an integrative rationalization of mental health that is, for instance, able to take advantage of deeper understanding of the psyche with the analysis of the psyche through examination of existential analysis, while also looking to provide more immediate functional improvements. That's to say that the Soviet government may not have been overwhelmingly happy about seeing characters seek a higher form of existence outside of their oppressive Stalinistic society. Nostalgia is another existential examination of the psyche by the hand of Andrei Tarkovsky, probably the most blunt with its anti-Soviet stance. This bluntness may have been because this film was made after Tarkovsky was exiled by the Soviet Union due to the nature of his films. The protagonist, Andrei, is a poet similar to how Tarkovsky's father was a poet. In the film, he moves to the exterior of the Soviet Union when he goes to Italy to conduct research. The protagonist runs into a madman named Domenico, who carries a candle through a pool. The candle that is carried in the film represents life and fragility of such. Elements have meaning in Tarkovsky's films, and in this case, fire represents life. With that metaphor in mind, life withstanding a beleaguered government is what kills Domenico when he lights himself on fire. He commits suicide for what seems at first to be no reason, but the take is so long that it is given meaning. What at first didn't make sense now can be seen that it's for a cause that is anti-establishment. This action ties in with the themes of the film and the protagonist's job as a poet. What Domenico does in committing suicide and carrying a candle through a pool cannot be explained at first, but that's the core essence of what the film is saying. For example, poets like Osip Mandelstam and Alexander Vvedensky were killed in the Soviet Union precisely because their poetry didn't make sense. Mandelstam even mentions a madman in his poems, saying, "Then the madman swallowed some water, came to himself, was silent." The idea of a madman is also romanticized through Mandelstam's poetry and this film. Andrei is eventually relegated to the place of the madman as he nonsensically walks a candle through the pool, just as Domenico would do by the end of the film. According to Christiel Burns, Andrei identifies not only with Sosnovsky, but also with Domenico, finding the madman sears face in the mirror as he walks through his dreams. Vivadensky mentions dreams in his poems when he says dreams are worse than macaroni, and the mirror when he says the mirror horse to trot on home. With this many connections, there is no doubt that this film is not making sense on purpose to issue a presentiment about poetry and the freedom to write without sense within the Soviet Union. Each of Tarkovsky's films are exilic in either mind or body, and have characters extending to the exterior of Soviet-like society in order to fraternize with an outside influence. Stalker has characters reaching out of a repressive society to achieve some higher form of enlightenment and existentialism. Solaris has characters reaching out into space because of bad conditions on the home front. Nostalgia has characters fleeing to a different country to do research. Finally, in these films, the characters encounter some form of outside influence. In Solaris, it's a higher life form, capable of taking the form of the main character's long-lost wife. In Stalker, it's a higher power found in the zone. In Nostalgia, it's a clinically insane Italian man who is frustrated with the government. It is this pattern that made Tarkovsky so unpopular with the Soviet government.